Hello, my gorgeous friends of Webflow. It's your friendly neighbor Francesco from Subasaido here. Today we're talking dropdowns, but not just the usual ones, but the kind that open on their own, automatically, on page load, on scroll, on link click, with just a few attributes and zero extra JS libraries. Let's make it happen. So, if you're looking forward to it as I am, stick around, and if you're interested in learning more about Webflow or no-code tools, check out our courses on Subasaido Academy. Link is in the description down below. And if you find my video helpful and want to support more of my work, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. But now, if you're ready, let's dive in. Let's start from the easiest example and let's set the scene. We have an FAQ page within our website, and we want that one of the dropdowns in the list opens automatically when the page loads, in order to catch the visitor's attention on one of the most important questions. Or maybe we're building a landing page for a course, and each dropdown contains a list of the lessons within a specific section of the course. And we want the very first dropdown to be open to give the user a sneak peek of the course content. How can we do that? Well, it's really just a matter of one single attribute, and that's it. Let's jump straight into Webflow and see how to set it up. Here we have a very simple FAQ page with just a plain list of dropdowns. We simply built a couple of animations to open and close each dropdown in a smoothly way, as we can see by quickly toggling preview mode. Now, let's say that we want the third dropdown in the list to open automatically on page load. How do we do that? Easy peasy. We select the dropdown, not the dropdown toggle, and after navigating to the element settings panel, we add the fc-dropdown-behavior custom attribute with a value of open. That's it. Now we simply have to publish our project and check the live link. Boom! The selected dropdown now opens automatically on page load. Super easy, right? Let's do the same thing, but in a slightly different way. We still have an FAQ page, but this time the content of our list of dropdowns is coming from a CMS collection. What's the tricky thing here? The tricky thing is that if we add the fc-dropdown-behavior custom attribute with a value of open to the dropdown inside a collection item, that attribute would of course be applied to all the dropdowns within the collection list, because all the edits we made to a collection item will affect all the collection items within the list. So how can we tackle this issue and only select a specific dropdown? Well, Webflow is a super flexible tool and has a very powerful feature. If we add a custom attribute to a collection list item or to any element inside a collection list item, we can bind its value to the CMS. But how can we actually use this feature? Once again, let's quickly jump into Webflow and see how to set things up. So, here we have our FAQ page. Basically, same thing as before. We're simply pulling the content from a CMS collection. And that's exactly where we are going to start from. Let's toggle the CMS view and have a look at the structure of the FAQ's CMS collection. Apart from the two obvious question and answer plain text fields, we can see we have another plain text field called open behavior, which is exactly what we are going to rely on to achieve the result we want. We just have to do one very simple thing. Open the CMS item we want to open automatically on page load and set the value of the open behavior field to open. Everything should be lowercase. The open behavior field for all the other items can be left empty. And that's it. Then we just have to select the drop-down inside the collection list item, and after navigating to the element settings panel, add the fc-dropdown-behavior custom attribute and link its value to the open behavior CMS field. Done. Now we simply have to publish our project and check the live link. Boom. The selected CMS dropdown now opens automatically on page load. Once again, super easy, right? This time, let's step up the game a little bit. Let's say that now we have two different sections, each one containing a list of dropdowns, and we want one dropdown from each list to open automatically on page load. One thing we have to mention is that technically this is not possible with a native Webflow dropdown. Why? Because of the way it has been built. If a dropdown is open, as soon as we interact with any other element and click on it, that dropdown gets closed. So there is no straightforward way to open two different dropdowns at the same time. If one is open, the other is closed. That's it. But that doesn't mean, of course, that we can come up with a sort of workaround. The crucial thing here is that, in a use case like this, the sections containing the two dropdown lists are well separated from each other within the page. So, basically, when one of the two dropdown lists is visible, the other one is out of the viewport, and vice versa. Probably some of you already know where I'm getting at, and the key here is triggering one dropdown to open as soon as it scrolls into view. Different approach, but same result. Cool, right? But how do we do that? Well, the same way as before, of course. We only have to assign our custom attribute to two elements instead of one. But now, time to jump into Webflow. Since we already went through the first two examples, we won't spend much time on analyzing the structure of the page. We simply have the exact same two sections as before, but within the same page. Inside the first list, we selected a dropdown and we applied the fc-dropdown-behavior custom attribute with a value of open. Similarly, inside the collection list, we added the same custom attribute to the dropdown element and linked its value to the open behavior CMS field. Configuration done. Of course, there's no limit to the number of dropdowns. So if you have 3, 4 or 5 dropdown sections in a single page, because who knows, you can have 3, 4 or 5 dropdowns that open automatically as soon as they scroll into view. Let's publish our project and take a look at the live link to see that everything is working exactly as expected. And now, two little bonus for you, my gorgeous friends of Webflow. Bonus number 1. What if we don't want this behavior to be active on mobile breakpoints? Because we don't want the content of the page to shift too much, or we simply don't want the user to scroll too much to go through the content of the page. Is there a way to do that? Of course! We simply need one more attribute that has to be added to the dropdown element we want to tweak the behavior of. So let's say that, though it doesn't make too much sense, but hey, this is a tutorial, right? We want the first dropdown to open automatically on desktop and tablet, but not on landscape and portrait. On the other hand, we don't want the second dropdown to open automatically on portrait breakpoint. We simply have to select the first dropdown and add the fc-dropdown-breakpoint-off custom attribute with a value equal to the name of the breakpoint we want to turn off the feature from. Because we said we want the first dropdown to open automatically on desktop and tablet, we will set the value of the attribute to landscape, while the value of the custom attribute will be equal to portrait for the second dropdown. Note that everything is written in lowercase. Now, let's publish our project and inspect the live link. We can see that within the desktop breakpoint, everything works exactly as before, and this is not a bad thing. If we now toggle the mobile view and we switch from desktop to tablet, well, of course nothing changes. One more good thing. But now, let's switch to the landscape breakpoint. We can clearly see that the first dropdown gets closed, and we can of course even do a second test and refresh the page, but the second one still opens. But as soon as we hit the portrait breakpoint, the second one gets closed, and of course the first one doesn't open, And we can see that even if we refresh the page, none of the two dropdowns opens up. Of course, as we've just seen, this behavior listens to the window resizing event. So, if we start enlarging the viewport from the portrait breakpoint, we first see that as soon as we hit the landscape breakpoint, the second dropdown opens up, and the first one stays closed. And as soon as we hit the tablet breakpoint, also the first dropdown opens automatically. And of course the same holds true for the second one. And everything is basically working exactly as we wanted. But now it's time for bonus number 2. What can it be? Well, let's say that the user starts interacting with the content inside one of the two sections and they open a new dropdown to read the content inside. If they scroll past the section hosting the list of dropdowns and then scroll back up, it might not be ideal to close the dropdown they've just opened to show the content of the default one once again, right? So maybe we can add a sort of rule and say, if the user starts interacting with the dropdowns, let's disable the default dropdown behavior. Can we do that? Of course. But how? With our super simple attribute that, this time, needs to be applied to the list or the div block wrapping the dropdowns. Once again, it's the fc-dropdown custom attribute, this time with a value of group. And of course, we can apply this custom attribute to all the lists or div blocks wrapping dropdowns in our page. By doing that, we can see that after publishing and inspecting the live page, if we don't interact with the dropdowns, everything behaves as usual. But if we open another dropdown within the first group, let's say, we scroll past the section and scroll back up once again, the dropdown we set as default doesn't open anymore. Of course, since we have not interacted with any of the dropdowns within the second group, if we scroll until the default dropdown within that list, it will open up. But as soon as we interact with another dropdown within that same group, scroll up and then scroll down once again, the default dropdown doesn't open anymore. I think this is a very cool option to have, isn't it? By the way, everything starts working as before as soon as we refresh the page. We're not done yet. We're not completely happy with what we've got so far and we want more. But what? Well, let's say that we want to be able to click on a link or a button and open a dropdown within the same page or in another page. And of course we want to associate a different link with a different dropdown. Once again, it's just a matter of a couple of attributes. Let's start from the same setup as the last example, but this time we also have a navbar. By clicking on the FAQs link, for whatever reason, we want the "What is a CMS" drop-down within the page to open. Slightly differently, we want the links inside the drop-down list within the navbar to take to the Terms and Conditions page, and we want each one of them to open a different drop-down in that page. Anyway, no matter what we want to do, we only need 2 more attributes, and they are extremely easy to place. For the first one, which are the links that should trigger a dropdown to open? Well, we have a few. The FAQs, and then all the links inside the dropdown list. To all of them, we need to add the fc-dropdown-source custom attribute with a meaningful value that can help us identify both the link acting as a trigger and the dropdown that will be opened. This time, let's write "What is a CMS?" When it comes to the links inside the dropdown list, since they have been added from a collection list, we need to find a way to set a dynamic value for the fc-dropdown-source attribute so that we can distinguish the links from one another. In order to do that, we can simply bind the value of the attribute to the slug field of the CMS collection, since all the slugs are different and unique by default. And now? Well, now we need to specify the targets. Similar attribute, but same value. Let's first select the "What is a CMS" dropdown within the page. We just have to add the fc-dropdown-target attribute with the same value as the trigger link. So we can just copy paste the value. And what about the dropdown inside the terms and conditions page? Well, we first navigate to that page, and after selecting the dropdown, we add the fc-dropdown-target attribute and link its value to the slug field. Of course, if we want, we can also add the fc-dropdown-behavior custom attribute to specify a default dropdown that should be opened when the page loads, but we are not accessing the page from a trigger link. Now, let's test things step by step. First, go back to the example 3 page. If we publish and go to the live page, we can see that the default dropdown opens as usual. But if we click on the FAQs link, the "What is a CMS" dropdown, the one that we connected to the link, is triggered. One thing to notice is that if we access the page by clicking on a link that triggers a dropdown to open, the default dropdown behavior will be disabled. Also, we can see that the page scrolls to make sure the dropdown is clearly visible within the viewport. Now, let's open the dropdown list in the navbar and click on one of the links. We can see that the corresponding dropdown within the terms and conditions page gets opened. Let's do that one more time. Go back to the previous page, click on another link, and we can see that, once again, the corresponding dropdown in the terms and conditions page opens up. Finally, a very last and super easy example, just to show that we can also use a link that's not inside the navbar. In this section, we have a button with the fc-dropdown-source attribute equal to supasaito. The corresponding dropdown is in the Open with Button page, as we can see by selecting the dropdown element. Now, if we go back to the live page and click on the button, we can see that we're taken to the Open with Button page with the dropdown open. So, in this case as well, everything is working just as we were expecting. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to show you that all the custom code used by this solution is inside this component. In order to properly use it, we have to make sure to copy paste it in all the pages where this custom dropdown functionality is used. Even the pages that only host a target dropdown, the one that's triggered by the click on a link. This is the reason why I put it within a component this time. I have it there in my components list, ready to be added wherever I need it to be. In the FAQs page, you can also find all the documentation you need to make sure to configure this solution even more quickly and with ease. And that's it. Today, we turned our humble dropdowns into little geniuses. They now open on their own, know when to stay close, and even follow cross-page instructions like obedient little UI puppies. All with just a few attributes. Of course, a link to the clonable for this project is available in the description down below. And if you found my video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more Webflow tips and tricks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Matane!